welcome to another episode of A Breath of Fresh Jacob, where the clap of my ass cheeks keeps alerting the guard. Today's question comes from Uncle Havoc and asks, what are your thoughts on quick time events in video games? Oh boy, okay. So, whoa. For those of you who don't know what quick time events are, Resident Evil 4. That's what quick time events are. Cue the fish. So quick time events are where a cutscene suddenly requires your input. They are meant to make cutscenes feel more engaging, more interactive. Now they've been around for a long time. I don't know what game did it first. Editor, please. But what's interesting about them is they kind of had an era. There was a period of time where pretty much every game had quick time events because it was the thing to do. Resident Evil 4 had them. God of War had them. Other games that aren't those two games had them that I can't think of off the top of my head because it's 3:54 in the morning. Maybe I should stop recording these at 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning and this wouldn't happen. It's whatever, it's fine. QTEs can be a good thing and they can be a bad thing. They can take a game and turn a cutscene within that game into a more cinematic experience. It can help you stay engaged during big plot dumps or something. Now, that in and of itself is also a bit of a gray area, because if you're trying to sit there and absorb the plot and the game's forcing you to constantly mash buttons, that can be super annoying. That can be really, really disengaging, and you might not care about the plot. An example of that also that has nothing to do with QuickTime events is when you're fighting something, or you're in the middle of a firefight, or some kind of combat scenario, and they're trying to give you plot exposition while you're fighting, that's annoying. I want to focus on the fight. I don't want to like half-ass the fight because you're trying to tell me something important, and I need to make sure I don't miss it because you may never say it again. I find that annoying. I know other people find that annoying, especially in the example of Resident Evil 4 and a lot of the Resident Evil games. They can add tension to cutscenes that wouldn't otherwise have that tension. Like if you're sitting there, and just as an example, one of the more famous QuickTime events is Chris Redfield punching a boulder near the end of Resident Evil 5.
Kiki touch, and pause. Kiki touch.
He doesn't just do that in the cutscene. You have to mash the button to make him do that. And what's interesting about that is it makes that cutscene way more intense. If you're just watching him punch it, it's like, okay. But if you're actually having to mash it, and if you don't mash it fast enough, your partner dies, which means it resets your progress, there's a lot on the line. Suddenly, this cutscene has become something so much more engaging, which is really, really cool, except when it's not. But unfortunately, when it's done wrong, it adds artificial difficulty. And you know, we've had a big discussion on artificial difficulty here. Go check that one out if you haven't checked it out yet. But adding artificial difficulty, especially in the way of QuickTime events, is usually bad. But it can be good, but is usually bad, but it can be bad, but is usually good. I prefer the ones that put you in the cutscene rather than just, haha, lol, you weren't ready, redo this part. Those suck. If you get a warning like, oh, get ready, then it's like, oh shit. Final Fantasy XIV actually does that really well. In most parts, when a fight has some kind of quick time event where you have to mash escape, it'll be like, get ready for action or whatever it says. And you're like, oh shit, and you're ready. And then you go, and there you go. It doesn't always do that. Another thing that I find fascinating about them is it also usually means if a cutscene has quick time events, you can't skip it because it's got gameplay elements in it. And again, this can be a good or a bad thing, but I'm going to focus mainly on how that can be good, and I'm going to use Resident Evil 4 as an example. There's a scene where Leon and Krauser are like pacing back and forth, taking jabs at each other with their knives, and they're also having a little bit of a plot exposition thing going on, but you're engaged while it's happening, but not constantly. You got to be ready. You got to wait for that prompt to appear, and then you hit it, and then that's it. And you hit it, and that's it. It's actually really well done because it makes it to where you can't skip that. Capcom was like, we don't want you skipping our cutscenes. We have plot to tell you. So make sure you watch it. And then they make you watch it by putting QuickTime events in there. Which again, for better or for worse. But it's something I noticed. Some games like to do it to force you to watch the cutscenes. I think that if a story's good enough, you won't feel forced to watch it. You'll just want to watch it naturally. Oh, actually, I just thought of another example of QuickTime events that didn't really occur to me before. Mass Effect 2 and 3 with the morality interrupts, like the pull left trigger for Paragon action, pull right trigger for Renegade action. Those are technically QuickTime events, which also makes you not want to put your controller down during cutscenes because you might miss a Paragon or a Renegade interrupt that could have changed the outcome of how something happens. And in a series where your decisions matter, that matters a lot. So that one didn't occur to me before, but that is actually a QuickTime event, so there you go. And then, of course, there are the QuickTime events that aren't just in cutscenes. They are pretty much the whole game. And I'm looking at pretty much anything David Cage has made. Heavy Rain, Beyond Two Souls, Detroit Become Human. All three of those are actually really, really good games. David Cage isn't a good game. He's a piece of shit. But those games are phenomenal, and they're pretty much just look around and QuickTime events. And yet they're really, really good. They excel at what they set out to do. Do I think other games could work the same way as well? Maybe. but I'll just give you an example. Detroit Become Human it was a phenomenal game. Fantastic plot, fantastic acting. I'm just gonna sit here and just gush about Detroit Become Human, how good it was. So I'm just gonna stop doing that. We're here to talk about QTEs. But that game had a lot of QTEs, and it had a lot of tense moments where if you failed them, it could ruin your game, which puts the stakes so high. Because you like fail it, and this particular action ends up happening, and the game continues from there. It could have branched off either direction. I hit my microphone. It could have branched off in either direction. You can keep whichever one you want. I'm going to say it a third time. It could branch off in either of directions, depending on whether or not you successfully completed the QuickTime event. And that's really cool, unless you suck at QTEs, and then you're just like, I just want the good ending, but I suck. I did get the good ending, though. It was damn near perfect. I was proud of that. Anyway, and then of course you have the memes, like Heavy Rain, press X to Jason. I don't know that I would necessarily call that a QuickTime event, but you know, actually I just thought of an example of a game that was pretty much exclusively QuickTime events that did really bad, and it was called Rise, something of Rome. It was a launch title for the Xbox One. It was pretty much all QTEs, and it was not fun because the QTEs never really did anything. It got really boring. Anyway, my point with QTEs is pretty much that they had their era where it was a popular thing in games. It has mostly faded out at this point. Sometimes you'll still see them in games, but it's usually not as thick as it was before. But really good question. QTEs is a decently debated thing as to whether or not they're good or bad, so that was a really good topic. Good question, Havoc. Thanks for watching. Share it, do all that stuff. I realize that I forget to tell you to do that in some of the videos, but I figure you guys know that by now, because that's how we meet new people. Please watch my shit. And just remember that I'm on a boat, and it is going fast, and I have a nautical-themed Pashmina Afghan. We'll see you next time. My voice getting scratchy. Probably because it's 4 o'clock in the morning.